And they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna release you in about in 36 hours." I'm like, "That's kind of fast." I'm like, "I just got cut open. You guys actually kind of screwed up, and you woke me up too early. And you think I'm gonna be okay to leave?" They're like, "Oh yeah, I'll be fine."
Chris, how did you find Carnivore?
Uh, I originally came from the health and fitness industry as a personal trainer, and I went into doing triathlons, and I did all natural bodybuilding while I was in law school. And then I was doing this through law school, passed the bar in 2011, was practicing law for the first couple of years. I was still staying in decent shape and getting good health. I was going to a lot of different functions. I think it was about like around 2016, I started having some. I think it started off with just some gut discomfort, not gut pain, discomfort. I wasn't digesting some of my food, even though it was mainly keto. It was just I remember just certain kind of vegetables were really aggravating me. But then it wasn't just the gut; it was kind of like the whole umbrella of autoimmune problems. It was like widespread like joint pain, muscle pain, and chronic fatigue, like brain fog. Because I remember I always used to wake up really early in the morning, like 3:30 or 4 in the morning sometimes, and I do a really early morning workout. I wasn't able to get out of bed. I was just really, really sick and tired. So that's where I made the wrong decision. This was the first time I actually went to a doctor because I wasn't feeling good. Because I usually never went to doctors for not feeling good. I'd go to doctors for broken bones all the time and a lot of injuries from stupid stunts and sports. So my family is like, my parents were like, you're not, feeling good. Go to a doctor; they'll take care of you. And I trusted that. So I went to doctors, and they told me it was like, it was gut discomfort. And then I told them I was like, but I'm still having like joint pain. There's something, something wrong with me. They didn't talk anything about diet. They said, no, you probably just got some gut infection, and you probably have some motility issues, and there's probably a little bit of inflammation. So they gave like I call it like the tri combo of death is like they gave me laxatives, corticosteroids, and antibiotics. And they were and I was, instead of becoming a routine patient, I became a routine customer. So it was like every few weeks, I was coming back for follow up appointments. They would kind of rotate some of the same kind of like drugs they're giving me. And I just started getting worse. And then, so the gut discomfort turned into gut pain. I think it was probably because the laxatives just rushing me out, but it was just starting to get really painful. And then about a year goes by, I just became much worse to a point they had to refer me to a colorectal surgeon because a piece of my intestine, my sigmoid colon, the towards the bottom end of your intestine, got really inflamed, and it was very painful. And the colon surgeon, did all these different imaging, and he did a colonoscopy. He's like, this one piece of your intestine, it's really inflamed. But I believe this is the problem. If we just remove this piece, about 6 inches of your intestine, you're going to feel a lot better. And I guarantee you, this is the main problem. And I think at that point in 2017, I think it was like February, where we're discussing the surgery, and the surgery was planned for April of 2017. And I was, so desperate at the point, very gullible, obviously, because you're just going to believe anything because you're just wanting to get better. Social life, dating life went out the window, and just wanted to get back to my old groove of things. So I trusted him, and so I said, fine, I want to go back to normal. Let's just do a quick surgery. He's like, oh yeah, it'll be done laparoscopic. It'll be in and out. Okay, I think that's exactly his precise words. First laparoscopic, in and out. You'll be back to normal in no time. And then the first thing went wrong is that right when they put me under, I woke up prematurely. I woke up while they were sewing up my intestines. So yeah, so I'm not sure if they gave me like there was a problem with the anesthesiologist, but that was one of the biggest kind of like red flags. Is I woke up in extreme pain, and I just woke up screaming. And I know you said you're in L.A. area, so if you know Orange County, I was in a big hospital, UCI in Orange County, and it was a big hospital, but I probably screamed loud enough to like most of the hospital would probably heard me. And they had to give me a bunch of morphine and like tramadol and just put me like sedate me and put me under, and then just drug me up. So I woke up like later that evening. I don't even remember what they were. I think they probably wheeled me around the hospital a couple times. I don't even remember what was happening, and I just felt like crap. And I remember that I was like, even after the surgery, I was trying to sit up, and coming from an extreme athlete and all natural bodybuilder, using your core, in a lot of different movements, I couldn't sit up. I was like, oh my god, I can't even sit up. I had to roll up just to kind of sit up from the bed, and they wanted me to be careful. And they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna release you in about in 36 hours. I'm like, that's kind of fast. I'm like, I just got cut open. You guys actually kind of screwed up and you woke me up too early. And you think I'm gonna be okay to leave? They're like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. I'm like, and then I noticed my bowels weren't even moving. I was like, and they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna. And it was that Thursday. It was a surgery on a Tuesday, and that Thursday, like, okay, we're gonna release you, this afternoon. I'm like, I haven't even moved my bowels. They're like, oh, you'll be fine. And once you go home, everything's go back to normal. And then I was just having all these spasms and like pain, and it was like basically very painful bowel movements for the first couple of weeks. And I actually had to take some laxatives eventually because I felt so blocked up, and it got to a point where I had a lump. So if you know laparoscopic, it's very minor incisions, but there's usually one major surgical area. So the anastomosis site, because I've studied a lot of medicine as well, especially because I started doing medical malpractice after this. So the main anastomosis site is where the main surgical area is, about 2 inches below my belly button. So that area started developing a big, like swollen red, kind of like it looked like a red rupee grapefruit, huge. And I remember when I was starting to swell up, I went to a quick follow up like the next week with the surgeon's assistant, and she's like, "Oh, it's just a hematoma. That's all. It just don't worry about it. It'll go back. It's just a little bit of swelling. It'll go back down." And the next week, it like tripled up in size. I took a screenshot with my phone, emailed it to the surgeon. He's like, "Get to the ER ASAP." And so, another kind of red flag. So they actually had to recut me open, and since it was kind of an emergency, run him into the ER. They just laid me down really quick. I didn't even get put under sleep. No anesthesia. I was awake. So they cut up and I think they injected a little bit of lidocaine around it, but that deep scalpel and how badly inflamed it was, I felt everything. I think I explained in the prior individuals that when I was in so much pain that I was biting my tongue to the point I think I was bleeding from my mouth just so I wouldn't scream. I was trying to stay still because I didn't want them to screw it up when they're cutting me open again. They said it was mainly superficial, but it was a very deep incision. They had to squeeze all the infection out and the blood out. And then I thought they're going to sew it back up. And then the doctor's like, no, no, no. You got an infection from the inside after we sewed it up last time. So we have to air it out. And this is kind of a common practice with with you're dealing with kind of like someone who's susceptible to infections. You're going to change the gauze, 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. I was like, this is going to be a pain. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, just be careful. Try not to, when you shower, try not to get it too wet. And it was basically, I had to do that 3 times a day. I had to be very careful. And I just remember even after they drained all that, it started getting infected again. And a couple weeks later, they had to recut me back open. Same thing in the ER. And I was awake. So that's why I tell people I have built a good pain tolerance since then. I've already had probably good pain tolerance with, I've got a decent amount of tattoos on my back and I've broken a lot of bones, but nothing matches up to getting your intestines cut open while you're awake. So I remember after that, I started being very, very careful with movement. I wasn't eating much. And then even when I started, the infection was slightly going away, but it would come and go. So it was just a very inflamed, kind of like swollen part of my intestines that I was so cautious and so depressed too. I'm like, I was expecting to get better. All of a sudden, I made my life 10 times worse by listening to these doctors. So then the doctor is like, okay, we had some follow-ups. You're still having some complications. You may just have to remove all of your intestines. And that's when I was like, no effing way. And I gave him the middle finger. I'm like, you made my life 10 times worse. I think something's wrong with me. I'm going to do some extensive blood work with a kind of an alternative doctor, a functional doctor. And I'm going to do some other kind of treatments. So I ended up doing some extensive blood work. I think some of it showed Lyme and co-infection, but I still, to this day, I don't believe that was the main problem. I believe I completely made myself worse with pharmaceuticals and relying upon doctors where they weren't really doctors, they were drug dealers. just put me on a bunch of medication with no advice to your diet or anything else like that. Even though I generally knew good dietary programs, patterns that worked well for me when I was younger, but now that I was in my 30s, it was, of course, a lot worse. So, you can't really handle a lot of foods in your 30s that you could in your 20s. I think you could possibly agree with that. So I ended to actually get the inflammation really down and make sure it completely healed because the infection was coming and going. I towards the end of 2017, I did like I think yeah, I did an extended water fast where I fasted for about 10. It was 10 days. That was my longest. Because I've done fast before, but it was only like a couple days. And most fasting clinics, by the way, because they have like up in NorCal, I think it was like with Santa Rosa, they're run by vegans. I think fasting is great, and I still do it occasionally. But I think the worst thing you can do after an extended fast is put some insoluble fiber right down your intestines, which is like sandpaper to your intestines, right? So, and then you start learning this when I started like studying a little bit more, and I got a dietetics degree after this because I started getting so in tune, like so interested. I was like, yeah, I'm still practicing law, I'm still working full time, but let me look into this a little bit more. So, I remember I was doing trial and error, and I remember that when I was eating any type of meat, whether it was chicken or steak, even fish, I wasn't having any problems. It was the plants, and I was like, all right, so I started doing trial error. Some plants cause, especially if it was like not cooked all the way, it was causing problems. And then I started doing like oils too. Like I remember I used to be able to do coconut oil because I did a lot of keto. But I remember I used to do like sometimes I would do a fasted workout early in the morning with just a little bit of coconut oil for a little bit of energy. That was causing like a little bit of burning in my upper throat. I'm like, God, it's like so. Kind of a cute things that happen is that I learned that when your body is really inflamed, you get sensitive to almost everything, and you have to go back to some of the basic nutrients your body needs to survive, and that's where now you're in a survival mode, and I think that's where it kind of put me in a survival mode. And I remember I was still, I was still hanging out with a lot of my friends from the health and fitness industry, and one of them was like, I heard about this like all meat diet that people eat, and it sounds like me that you're just having sensitivities to everything but meat. Maybe just eat meat for the rest of your life. And I think it's called a carnivore diet. And it kind of like drew a huge amount of attention. I was like, you know what? I think you're onto something. I was like, it's something we've been eating for millions of years, right? I mean, so I ended up. I think the first person I spoke with was Michaela Peterson before she became very popular. It was actually a phone call. Or she called me on her cell from like a 30-minute consult. It was very basic, like look, don't even use coconut oil to cook. Don't use any oils. The only thing you should use is tallow. I wasn't even so familiar with tallow at this point. I'm like, what the hell is tallow? And I had to like find it. And you can only find it at certain health food stores, like Whole Foods, Sprouts, and then you could get it online. So I had to buy that. And when I did the taste, I just took a little tablespoon just because I just want to taste it, like a teaspoon. And I was like, oh, this is good. It was soothing on my gut. I'm like, all right, I'm onto something. So I knew the carnivore diet was kind of like there's something to it. I was kind of like the missing piece of the puzzle. So then afterwards, I Skype with I did a Skype with Dr. Baker. I think towards the end of 2018, like I think it was like September or so. And then he went over a little bit more details on like your macros. He was a little bit more like he was like keto's high fat, 70% fat, 30% protein, but he liked a little bit more high protein. And when I told him, I was like, I heard there's this clinic out in Budapest, Hungary, called the Paleo Medicina Clinic that people go when they're really sick for autoimmune. And some of these other people in this carnivore community were telling me about it. I think I want to just kind of stay with them because I've been working full time. Even I was even working with a laptop like after I woke up from the surgeries and I was a little drugged up. I think I was responding to emails and all that. So I was working this whole time, all the surgeries. Even when I was fasting for 10 days, I was working. I was like, you know what? I want to just kind of push work off, maybe get rid of like some clients, just put on like a little kind of a leave of absence for like about a week or two, and just kind of go over there and just personally work with something so I can get in a better environment because my family wasn't supporting me. They they thought I was stupid for not listening to doctors. I'm like, you just saw the doctors cut open my intestines, made me 10 times worse, and completely ruin my life. And you're going to insult me for not listening to doctors. So I didn't even have good family support. And well, I had some friends with the health and fitness industry, but they're like, yeah, shit, you got Chris, you got just just go with all meat. And they called me giggity in college for different reasons, but they're like, Giggity, you gotta just probably just eat meat. That's what you gotta do. So I ended up Skyping with Dr. Sophia Clemens, who I still speak with today. And anyways, I think so highly of her because when you treat it with like the Paleo Medicina Clinic, I think I was there with like a group of 10 people from different countries, and we actually went to like a thermal hotel where they just serve meat, and you meet with the doctors like once or twice a day to do your ketones and and sometimes they'll just do general blood work, but they said, look, you're only gonna eat 2 times a day and no supplements. And we're like, no supplements. I mean, I was taking I was taking some multivitamins, and I think I was taking like some vitamin C to keep my immune system up. And I wasn't taking like the really harsh laxatives, but I was taking herbal laxatives, which I learned they were just as bad because I was taking them occasionally if I got too blocked up because I'm like, just to keep the motility going because I have scar tissue. Even though like it kind of healed on the outside, intrinsically it's tense. So she's like, no, you're not allowed to take anything. You're just going to eat a lot of fat, more fat than you're ever used to, meat and salt, and that's it, and water. And I was like, what about getting blocked? She's like, you're going to eat so much fat, you're not going to have to worry about getting constipated. And she was completely right. So, because they served, and I think I got addicted to fat. I never had a sweet tooth. I think even when I was in college, I was a fraternity president, so I partied even though I was a trainer, I partied quite a bit. So I think my diet in college was like chicken, rice, and tequila, and that was kind of like the combo. But anyways, I was like, I never had a sweet tooth. I never like especially when if I was on a date and they start eating like all these sweets and all that with dessert. I'm like, I'm not really into that with chocolate or anything. But I was like kind of more of a carb holic. But then when I started realizing like how good quality fat, because in Hungary they have some of the best pigs in the world. I think some of the best pork because they don't feed any of their pigs or their poultry corn or soy. So it's kind of like raising right from your own backyard, and that's how it should be raised. It was so delicious and soothing because usually I would occasionally get sick from eating bad pork in the United States, but I was like, it's so soothing. But I remember that I ate like all the pork fat slabs on the table that were for everybody. I went straight to the bath, but I was like, even though I kind of rushed me to the bath, I was like, I didn't have to take anything. And if I get blocked up, I just eat a bunch of fat. This is the easiest thing. And I could just modify. And that's what I did. So when I came back to the United States, I want to kind of promote the carnivore diet. I was like, dude, look, I even went to dietetics training and went through I'm a dietetic technician, which is like a step below a registered dietitian. And I was like, why? When I remember that when I was sick and when I did see the doctor, the only thing that he told me about diet was don't eat too much red meat. I'm like, why? They're like, oh, it's just not good for your gut or your heart. I'm like, but he never explained it. And then you learn that it's complete BS. And I was like, no, I saved my life with meat. Basically, I'm feeling so much better. People need to know you shouldn't be demonizing meat. So when I came back to the United States, I started, promoting a little bit more, getting a little bit more in tune to the carnivore community, and just I got, I don't like attorneys anyway, so I was like, I would rather, I want to stick with the community. Like, I want to see other people thrive, and that's why I got so inspired when I saw other people healing. And it wasn't for I had a kind of a different situation where I got my intestines cut open and almost lost my intestines. I had to save it, and so I save it. But there's a lot of people that have like severe diabetic like ulcerations or like these other autoimmune conditions or severe psoriasis, and you start learning like and they healed from a meat-based diet and they got off all these dangerous medications and they healed with meat. That's where we share the same story. So I was like, yeah. So I wanted to promote it a little bit more. And I think what kind of provoked me to run for Congress because I think I got my MBA uh, after I got back from Budapest, Hungary. I was feeling great and I was feeling functional. My brain cells were working again. I got my MBA and I got licensed in another state. I got my broker's license and I was just doing really well with work. But then the vaccine mandates came into play in the mask mandates, and it really pissed me off because I was the only attorney speaking out against these mandates in California. I mean, there are some, but they weren't really speaking out. Some of my colleagues that even didn't agree with these forced vaccinations on these healthcare workers and government employees, they're like, yeah, that's stupid. I'm like, well, speak out against it. This is bullcrap. Like, they shouldn't be forcing some vaccine that was kind of promoted by soy boobs Billy Gates, who has no medical degree whatsoever, on the American public, and especially these healthcare workers. Like they shouldn't be forced. If you want to become a sheep voluntarily, go ahead. That's fine. You want to be a sheep, but you shouldn't be forcing it on the American public. So when I spoke out more than once, I made some comments in the LA Superior Court because they're trying to say like they were talking about required vaccinations to get into the LA Superior Court. And when yeah, it was so stupid. And the mask, and I just made jokes about the mask. I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, Your Honor. I was like, and so I was like, I don't like to wear these chin diapers or these face panties. I just started kind of insulting it in front of the judge. I didn't care. I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I remember the judge kind of like threatened sanctions against me, and then some other my colleagues actually almost were trying to report me to the California State Bar. And since I was licensed in Texas, they tried to report me to the Texas State Bar because I was speaking out, and they call it like a danger to our public health system. And I was like, this is complete opposite. I think, and now that we're learning about everything that went on with these mandates, more truth is coming to light. So it kind of motivated me after that point that I'm going to run for I'm going to get my PhD in public policy because I want to make some public policy changes. And it crossed over with public health. I want to make some changes as to our nation's public health at a congressional level. I'm going to run for Congress. I've stayed true to my word. I made that decision 2021. I started my PhD in 2022. I'm finished. I just got my IB approval. I'm waiting for the final oral defense to become Dr. Brandlin, and I turned 40 in like 9 days. So this is all coming to play, but I just been working my butt off, and I want to make sure that no one has to go through the same pain that I went through.
Yeah. That's uh, crazy that they're just like, "Oh, just go home," and then it gets infected again,
And
and
I'm not the only one. When you start hearing more and more stories, it may not be the exact same story as someone getting their intestines cut open and all that, but it's very similar stories. People are getting worse. Have you ever seen what they feed hospital patients right after like a tremendous surgery? Like what oatmeal and like Jello and like fruit punch. I'm like all this sugary carbohydrates and high fructose corn syrup and all this bull crap, and no quality meat, which is the main nourishing kind of point of our existence. And
mm,
that's where I learned that. That's why I like fasting, but you must refeed on meat. And so after the 10-day water fast, by the way, I ate a slow cooked steak. And that's where I kind of was kind of like an eye opener, like the aha moment, like, my God, extended fast, meat afterwards is like a really good combination. And I don't know, I still do that to this day. And I just want to make sure that a lot more people are aware. And then on this campaign trail that, someone from Bobby Kennedy's team, everybody calls him RFK Jr., but call him Bobby Kennedy, because I started reaching out to people last year when I was like, hey, I'm getting close to I'm going to finish my PhD next year, but I want to run for Congress. I was actually thinking of like 2028, 2030, or 2032. It's like every 2 years, right? And they're like, well, they looked at my background. They're like, well, you got a really interesting background. You're like, you used to be like a health nut, and then you went into practicing law, and now you're getting your PhD in public policy. But you have a lot more passion towards health than the law. Why don't you run for the midterms of 2026? I was like, I don't know. I kind of like, held off like getting married and having kids, and I haven't taken an extended vacation for a long period of time. Ever since I passed the bar exam, I started getting additional credentials and schooling like afterwards, an additional bar license. I'm like, I haven't taken a break. Like, I kind of want to just like go to Italy. I'm Italian. My background's Italian. I haven't even been to Italy. I'm like, I haven't even seen my distant relatives. I was kind of going to go there for a couple months and just kind of chill the hell out. And she's like, no, this is a good opportunity. We'll give you a campaign manager and we'll give you a team. And, you're kind of a dual resident back and forth between California and Nevada. Don't waste time with California. We feel you'd be a perfect candidate to run for Nevada to help embrace the Baja movement. And I signed the agreement in January, and I went right before I went to DC, and I got to meet most of the people at the Maha Coalition. And I've been on the fun campaign trail for the last 5 months or so. So yeah, I got 16 more months to go.
wow. It's the election process is very kind of drawn out, right?
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
I gotta say something. I always thought attorneys were the biggest crooks. That means people say doctors, but attorneys, because I make it a public statement. I don't trust my own kind. Especially when you come from the health and fitness industry, because other trainers, when you're a fitness trainer, they're not gonna stab you in the back. I mean, they won't even really tell your clients like, oh, you're not getting results because you're training with them. Like, you're like, hey, well, I just have a different kind of like system. And we kind of, and as trainers, we actually referred like a lot of our clients individually if we didn't, work well with them, especially if it's a very sensitive, like elderly person. I had someone that worked with, a lot of like physical therapy through rehab. And like, this guy's, I was like, my buddy John's gonna be a lot better, like, trainer for your type of condition. But, attorneys really stab each other in the backs, but politicians 10 times worse. I mean, just working with people to try to get on the campaign team or help me or start with the fundraising. I mean, I already got some people really stabbing me in the back. I learned that they're working for the other parties.
For you doing Carnivore, how long has it been now? That's been
I was
5
well.
years?
I flew over to Budapest, Hungary, Thanksgiving Day of November of 2018. So yeah, it's almost 7 years actually when you think about it.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
7 years.
you start learning like things that can like you have lifestyle changes. My one thing is I don't sleep much because I run my own law firm and I'm kind of like running a campaign at the same time and I'm trying to get my final oral defense approval for my PhD at the same time. I'm doing that all on my own, and so that my one vice, to be completely honest with you, Dave, is I need more sleep. But I don't think I have much of a choice for the next 16 months. So I'm trying to. What I actually learned is I can kind of regenerate a little bit more if I can really get some. I do hyperbaric oxygen therapy. If you're familiar with that, I do medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That's something that helped me heal too. Because I started having some skin conditions, even though they were getting better with carnivore, like they were so severe after the surgery where um, I learned that medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy is just like you just lay in an oxygen chamber. It's just really high density oxygen that you're basically breathing in that can heal you 10 times faster than normal. And then I learned, of course, red light therapy is something that I kind of incorporate. I do contrast therapy where you do saunas and cold plunges. I tried to get a little bit more grounding, especially down working in Los Angeles County 24/7. I try to get out to the parks and do some grounding. Peptide therapy is something because I represent a lot of function. I even though I got wrecked by a lot of conventional doctors, I want to make a good distinction. There's conventional doctors and there's functional or regenerative or alternative doctors. I give so much more respect, especially when they went through the BS medical curriculum, which teaches doctors 90% pharmacology in their education in medical schools, which I've actually confirmed with Chafee, Kiltz, Baker, and a few others, and it's probably going to be buried tomorrow. Is that yeah? Most of what they're teaching our future doctors is pharmacology and surgical. So that's like the main two things that they're teaching doctors. I'm like, so there's kind of a saying, and I want to promote this too, is that if you go to a doctor and you're having problems, and that doctor prescribes you medication without asking about your diet or your lifestyle, you don't have a doctor. You have a drug dealer, and it's so clear. And that's a major problem we're having. I mean, I want. I don't think a lot of doctors are sinister and evil, and they're just trying to, cut open their, patients. Even though I had a bad experience, I don't think it's like common on all doctors. I think they actually do believe they're trying to help people, but they're taught the complete wrong way. And you and I have learned this.
Yeah, and it's the people that get out of this and start to question the system and actually think critically and realize, well, it's not just the medications. It's like a holistic approach to your life. It's like
Yeah.
eating properly. It's like getting sunlight. It's like doing all these things. It's these doctors that I've got so much respect for that actually break out of the system because they face so much pressure, right?
And that's why I reached out to Dr. Chafee when I got connected with him a couple of years ago, and I just kind of showed my respect, like, hey, I really been following your YouTubes, I really like that you're speaking out, and then I was like, hey, I even got one of your books. He's like, actually, that's not my book. Where'd you find that? I'm like, oh, it's kind of on Amazon. He's like, I never published that. I'm like, well, you can track down the author if you want, and I can track them down and get them removed from all your platforms. He's like, can you help me out? I was like, yeah, of course. I do this for a living. I do all civil. I do like 12 different practice areas. I do everything except for like criminal defense, unless it's some friends from college who are still getting DUIs because they still think they're in their 20s. because that's easy. Or and family law, that's very depressing. I've done family law. That's, by the way, I'm not sure if you know, Dave. Attorneys have the highest suicide rates almost out of all professions. It's been since 2013 for the last 12 years. We did like an MCLE seminar because you have continuing education that the attorney industry has the highest rates of suicide, substance abuse, like everything that could go wrong will go wrong. Um, and but family law attorneys have probably the highest suicide rates because they deal with the most stressful part. And it's just and actually that's one of the reasons I never wanted to get like settle down and get married, because I've seen like not only my relatives but my friends, because I helped them out because they couldn't afford attorneys. Like, here, let me help you out with this divorce. Let's talk about the let's try to work out some kind of stipulation with the other attorney for you know for for custody. If you're going to be alternating every 2 weeks. Let's see like how you're going to arrange or kind of like distribute your assets, because you want to keep one part of your property but you want to give them a bank account. So I helped a lot of friends and family with that. But when you see what they go through, especially when there's children involved, it really made me think twice about getting married. So, and now that I'm on a campaign, I really don't, as an attorney running for Congress, especially as a carnivore lawyer running for Congress, and I've already been publishing some different articles about this questionable, crazy meat eating attorney that's running for Congress. So you can already imagine what kind of like backlash I'm getting. Even though when you look at the CVs of my other opposing candidates, even though they're older, I'm turning 40. I've done way more in my life than I have. So I'm not really afraid of or like intimidated by their accomplishments, but I'm getting a lot of backlash as the meat eating attorney running for Congress. So of course these mainstream media, as you may understand, it's very left wing. So a Republican meat eating attorney who believes in God and is supporting the Second Amendment to the United States. They really try to attack me, but um, no, I'm very supportive that I have a lot of the carnivore community supporting me in the run, and I do feel confident I can win this. But it's going to be stressful. But and like I said, I have 99 problems, but I handle them very well. Just because I have a lot of clients that come to me with problems, but I don't want 100 problem. So that's why I'm not going to really settle down with a relationship. I think I'd rather focus on helping out the American people than dealing with someone who wants to ask me what they're doing on a Saturday evening.
Right. So, you are doing a lot. You're extremely busy
Yeah,
with everything
right.
everything that you're juggling. Do you feel like the way you're eating helps you manage that?
Oh yeah. You know, I think it was. I know there's some carnivores that are. It's not really carnivore. They're trying to follow this like Saladino fruit and honey diet. I can tell you right now, I can't afford, not like financially, like health wise, to slip off the diet. I think the only thing I ate a few times. I think especially when I had like mold exposure, I couldn't eat that much fat because mold is like my kryptonite. Is that I would do a little bit of white rice as a starch. That didn't hurt my gut, but it would cause extreme joint pain. And I couldn't deal, especially with me traveling every 2 weeks and driving back and forth between two different states to run my own campaign for the next 16 months. I can't afford to eat that crap. I did slip on a little bit of, I was occasionally dating, nothing serious, but like, or going to different functions, and I'd have to find something that had only meat, but everybody's drinking, so I had probably a couple of shots of tequila. That's probably the only thing, but I can't really afford that much of a slip because you just feel like crap the next day, and I try to do as much administrative work. So, yeah, I think if I slip off this diet, I'm screwed. So I have to eat. I have no choice. Yeah,
So, what's the daily menu like for you?
intermittent fasting till lunch. When I travel, I usually intermittent fast till dinner. Um, Usually lunch is kind of like I try to eat it not so much fat at lunch. I don't know why I like to eat a lot of fat at night. I think it's just maybe it helps you sleep better. But um, I found that if it's not a steak or a sirloin, I have histamine sensitivities during the mold season, so sometimes I'll have veal. And we got a little air fryer, or I'll basically try to like do a slow bake in like a toaster oven in the office. Or there's a couple of farms that I still do a little bit of poultry, but I gotta get one thing I've learned is I don't like a lot of chicken that's been fed corn and soy. So there's only There's probably about 20 farms in the United States. So I buy from all these different farms. I like supporting the American farmers, right? Farm to table kind of like, methodology. Buy directly from the hardworking farmer straight to your table. That's probably the best way you can source your meat. There are certain farms that they sell corn-free and soy-free chicken, and I found that I digest that so much better than some of the store-bought chicken. So, like North Star Bison's one that has soy-free, corn-free chicken. There's Lanker beef. There's Wild Oak Pastures. There's family-friendly farms. There's Troop. There's a couple different farms, but they all have these corn-free, soy-free. So sometimes I'll buy bulk and I'll have a little bit of chicken of that. At night, I usually either do a slow roast at a low temperature, slow and low, because I found that if I overcook a steak, I really don't digest it that well, especially when people cook at really high temperatures. And um, I either do a slow roast at a low temperature of usually like a tri-tip or a ribeye or a strip steak. Um, or what I've actually been doing, I'll show you my videos. Sometimes I just grind it. I get a really clean, marbly, good sore steak. I grind it myself and I eat it raw. Or if I'm at a dinner function, I'll get a filet mignon and I'll get it black and blue Pittsburgh style, which is it's like very very raw. It's just a quick sear on the outside. That's it. Because filet mignons are very very tender. It's like the most tender cut of the steak that you can just eat that raw. And as long I'm not really. I'm never worried about eating raw meat. I just know that there's some people that can eat raw chicken and raw pork. I can't handle that, but I learned that I actually digest raw beef a lot better from a quality source. If it's like of a Walmart or something like that, if it's a crappy steak or if it's really aged, no, I don't eat it raw. But
Right.
I found that I Sprouts is a local food store that's they're all over the United States, but they have a couple right next to my office. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll get either a tri-tip or I will get like a chuck roast because it's a little cheaper. But sometimes I like the ribeyes just because the marbling is so good and it's got a really good fat. Because the raw fat is something that's the most soothing on my gut. Or I'll get bone marrow bones and I will just sit the bone, room temperature for about 15 to 30 minutes. Let it defrost because you buy it frozen, and the marrow slides right out, and just eat that raw. Because I can tell you right now, if I eat a bunch of rendered fat, it goes right through you. But raw fat, different story. It's very soothing. Um, yeah, I don't do a lot of organ meats, but the only or if I did organs, like I think technically the bone marrow is like if you buy it from certain like farmers in the United States, they'll have a selection on their website of like organ meats, and they'll have like steaks, and they'll have grinds. A lot of times the bones, the bone marrows will be in the organ section, so some people consider it. But or I will grind and or small pieces of raw suet, and that's another good raw healing fat. That's something that Dr. Sophia Clemens taught me is that, if you're not digesting so much fat, like the raw fat is really, really soothing. Um, yeah, especially bringing in bad air quality in here in California, in LA,
Mm,
or if I'm in Vegas too. I mean, it's not as bad as LA, but still a lot of smoke. There's a lot of, pollution in the air, and sometimes it can irritate your upper GI. Or if there's mold everywhere in LA County. It irritates. So rather than taking a bunch of like, people take like these antacids and proton pump inhibitors, I take some glutamine sometimes, or I take some collagen powder, or I'll take, I'm into peptides, so I take BPC 157. But the most soothing thing is raw fat. I always try to tell people that if you ever get like a perfect raw bone marrow, just defrost it for like 20, 30 minutes and just eat that raw. It's the most soothing thing for your upper gut. Especially if they're having like, if they're like, oh, GERD, I'm having like, gastric reflux. I'm like, no, you have irritation in your upper GI. You need to heal it. Yeah.
mm. Yeah. So just thinking about your run for Congress and being involved in the Maha movement, um, one of the things that frustrates me so much when you go into the supermarket, whether it's in America, whether it's in Australia or
Yeah.
Japan, is um, you see people in the cereal aisle and they're
Yeah.
loading up their cart with all the packaged products, and they think they're doing the right thing, right? My kind of frustration, my anger is with the way they've been led to believe over a period of decades that they're
Yeah.
doing the right thing, and they're thinking to themselves, "I feel unhealthy, I'm overweight, but one of these days, if I eat enough of this no cholesterol, low fat cereal, it's
No.
gonna be right. I'm gonna be okay."
No.
Like, is there
That's a
do you think
huge
there's a
issue. I
chance
think.
of getting out of this?
Yeah. No. That's what I want to change is because this mainstream rhetoric is that they demonize meat. They think meat is going to be causing all this heart disease and get people overweight. And I'm like, I used to be a competitive bodybuilder. I was always been kind of like keto, but now I'm eating more like beef fat than any other person that comes into me, and I can probably still I'll show you my shapes and some photos. I'm actually starting to compete again. I'm starting to do mixed martial arts again, even though I tore my LCL and I think I got a fractured rib. I'm getting my butt kicked by these 19-year-old kids, but I'm turning 40, so you got to expect that. But I'm getting in really good shape, and everyone's like, God, they saw me eating just the raw bone marrow. Like I remember because some restaurants you can get bone marrow. I'm like, give me extra bone marrow. And they're like, that is so much fat. That is so unhealthy for you. And I look, and they're like 80 pounds overweight. I'm like, do I look like I'm worried about fat right now? And that's not going to get me fat. And this is why I'm not getting fat is because you're eating like a lasagna dinner with a lot of pasta. This is why my Italian relatives probably don't like me is because I never eat with them. But yeah, I'm like, it's so clear you've been manipulated your entire life, and you're still getting manipulated until you can wake up and see exactly what you've been all this agenda that they pushed on you. You'll learn that meat and fat are something that we've been eating for over 2 million years. It's the main thing of our most nourishing diet, and it's not going to get you fat. In fact, when we started decreasing the fat, that was like the early 80s with this low fat craze. Is that when it started? That's when we started becoming fatter. So, what does that tell you? It's not the fat, it's your damn carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is a non essential nutrient.
People people have got the freedom to eat whatever they
Yeah.
want, and the companies have got the freedom to advertise and blah, 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 but, um, what's the solution? Is it, like, just m is it
I
trying
want
to get proper education out there, or
That's probably, that's something we're kind of discussing. I'm going to discuss with Dr. Barry tomorrow. Is, I wanted to see if it was possible to change a lot of the curriculums for these medical schools to teach our future doctors. But then Dr. Kiltz was telling me it may be kind of like a brick wall that I'm running into because all the major donors for these medical schools are pharmaceutical companies. So that's an issue. And then they're tied with these big C companies, all these major, like, um, all the ones that sell all these cereals, right? And like Kellogg's and all of this. So they have so much more money, power, and control. That's a huge problem. So I think what we first thing I'm still going to see if we can change. Like I think Bobby Kennedy did something good that he was limiting the amount of advertising that was by pharmaceutical companies. That's one thing. Restricting a lot of pharmaceuticals. Period. I don't think all pharmaceuticals are going to kill everybody, but I think a lot of them are overprescribed and dangerous and probably about a re-education of our doctors and our dietitians because I got credentialed with the AND, which is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and I told them already that they need to flip the food pyramid upside down. And actually, that's why I got my MBA. I was going to get my master's in dietetics, but was at USC, the head master's program of dietetics. When I told them that, they're like, "Hey, you're an attorney, you're a broker. Why are you going to get your master's in dietetics?" I'm like, "You guys need to flip the food pyramid upside down. I just saved my life with meat, and you guys are just teaching this wrong propaganda. I want to make a change." And they didn't like that. I'm like, "No, this food pyramid has been standard for many decades." And I'm like, "Yeah, and it's obviously not working." So yeah, I that's why people kind of come at me when I face my principles. I don't want to hide my honest opinions. I don't want to be influenced by others. That's why I don't want to suck up to a bunch of rich CEOs and other politicians for the campaign money. I'd rather just work my butt off, and I would prefer to win the support and the trust of not only the carnivore community, but all the ketogenic and all the other health industries that basically just want to see our health improve. I'd rather get $5 to $10 from a couple 100,000 people rather than getting these big $50,000 checks for the campaign from these bureaucrats or these big CEOs. Because what they'll try to do, and I've seen it because I've had some family get someone involved in, but not to an extent I was, but I've had some friends, and I've also had even some of my clients go into politics. Is when you suck up to these very rich politicians or these big CEOs, if their values are not completely aligned with you, they will try to use their influence to modify your policies. And you see this, and even my own party, it's happening. Okay, this is going to be my bipartisan kind of figure. Is that I've seen a lot of the Republicans get persuaded and bought out. I'm tired of it. Look, because I've almost ended my own life with doing this, but I want to make sure no one else has to go through the same suffering. So I'd rather win the support of the American people rather than sucking up to a bunch of rich crooks.
Right. Yeah, because the problem is, even if your values are completely aligned with the person that's
Yeah.
helped you out, it's only a matter of time until
Yeah,
they
they're like, hey,
aren't,
Chris,
right?
remember that $50,000 check I gave for that campaign back in like 2025, 2026? Yeah, I need a little favor. So I got this bad. So I want you to propose this something different at the next congressional hearing if you can, because I think our industry, we're suffering and we can really use some money. I'm like, yeah, but what benefits are you serving to the American public? Isn't this going to be serving you rather than the people? And that's going to be
Right.
the mission.
So if you kind of avoid that kind of support, does that put you at a disadvantage, like
Yeah,
to
yes
get
and no.
elected?
Yes and no. I don't believe this next election run is going to come all down to money, because I know there's already probably one or two candidates that probably, even though I've been a relatively successful attorney and I manage kind of like I have portfolios with properties in different states. I know there's some wealthier people, but I think the American public is getting sick of the people with the most money trying to buy out the elections, and they lost a lot of trust in government. So I think I'm actually gonna be doing the traditional grassroots approach. I am I am not only getting more familiar with because I'm becoming more familiar and acquainted with the military, or over in Las Vegas, because my friends are some of the I used to be a competitive wrestler in high school. A lot of my former teammates are into the military, and they're getting connected because they know that I kind of have a lot more passion for health and helping people rather than screwing people as an attorney. So they got me connected with the Dallas Air Force Base. I'm getting connected with the MMA because they know that I'm a former wrestler and I'm more into fitness than practicing law. So I'm training like some of the UFC team, like on Saturdays, getting my butt kicked. That's why I think I tore MCL, LCL, and got a bruised rib. And I'm also kind of getting connected with the law enforcement because a lot of my friends are in law enforcement. And I'm actually working with the senior centers too because I want to see kind of like their health improve. Let's get some activities, so more activities for the senior centers so they can get them out of their rooms, get them out more out in the public, do some more physical activities that they can maintain without breaking a hip. I was like, let's get them out because I think we can really improve the longevity and the prosperity of the American people if we do the things the right way. And I want a lot of the American public to know that. And I think I'd rather win their support that way.
Yeah, nice. 50% of my audience is from the US. So if there's people watching that will potentially be voting in your election, what message do you have for them?
I think even though some of the values may be aligned with myself and my other opponents, if you watch me, if you speak with me, and you follow me for the next 2 years, you should vote for the person that you believe is actually going to do something to make the change. Someone that walks the talk, because there's too many talkers right now, and there's no one actually doing anything. Um, so if you see my commitment to the carnivore community and the rest of the community for the last couple of years, and I can get vouched by Dr. Shafee. Dr. Sophia Clemens will vouch for me for the past 7 years. Speaking of people that kind of, and that's why I like Dr. Sophia Clemens. She's one of the people that kind of really started the carnivore diet for like kind of more as a movement because she was like the one of the few people that were doing clinical trials back in like I think it was like 2011. They're doing clinical trials to prove the benefits of a meat-based diet on how it can put a lot of autoimmune conditions in remission, even cancer in remission. That's what like something that Dr. Seyfried's speak with. I'm going to speak with him at Boston in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I have a lot more ideas on how we can improve not only the economics. There's a lot of things we can do. I mean, I think we got a lot more control for our our spending, our tax dollars. I want it to come back to the people to improve our nation's health, and I think that's why they should vote for me. And I always invite people to speak with me because I try not to say go speak with my manager. No, if you watch me a lot of these carnivore meetups, I give my personal cell phone to everybody that attends over there, and I'm going to be hosting a very large. I'm going to be co-hosting with Dr. Kiltz. He's going to co-host it with me in Vegas. It's going to be July 19th, and I'm inviting. There's I think we already have a couple hundred people are going to go. We're going to have like a Noah's Ark style kind of like meat buffet. We're going to have like all this tri-tip like ribs, ground beef, brisket, pulled pork, pulled chicken. It's going to be a good kind of a meetup, but this is where people can kind of meet with me one on one, and I'm already kind of communicating with people, in different social media backgrounds. So I invite everybody to reach out to me, even if they don't believe in some of my policies and they have kind of like a respectful disagreement. Then let's have a logical and productive kind of debate on why you think you're right. And I always invite that. But there's some groups that even if you throw out that invite, they just no. I don't have any. I don't need a reason to disagree with you. But
Right.
we're gonna get those type of people wherever we go.
Yeah. So how can people find out more about you, and get more information online?
Sure. So my website's getting more and more expanded. The campaign website. I have a law firm website, and I have a campaign site. The campaign site is very simple. It's chrisbrandlin.com. I think I sent you that in an email. The law firm's website. If I always tell the carnivore community. I'm doing videos, by the way, on some legal advice, free legal advice to the carnivore community on YouTube because I started YouTube not too long ago. But even though I've always invited people to email me or call me, my law firm's website is brandlinlaw.com. You can email my legal email is my work email is probably the best just because I deal with clients in different states and actually in different countries now since I'm doing some international work. It's chris@brandlinlaw.com. And then my campaign manager, even though I was very hesitant on getting on the social media platforms because I used to be on just mainly LinkedIn, a little bit of Facebook. I just went on the Facebook just to kind of connect with the carnivores and just follow people, right? But now, she made me get on every platform, so Facebook, Instagram, and she's managing the X and LinkedIn, where I like to post a lot of my offensive political humor. But you can always reach me there. But I actually promote a lot of the carnivore on LinkedIn too. I've actually been promoting support the farmers for like the last ever since I went to carnivore. I think it was ever since I came back in 2018. I started buying from because Dr. Sophia Clemens, she gave me a list of American farmers when she sent me back to the U.S. to buy from. I thought that was so cool. You got someone halfway across the world on the other side of the world. You're trying to like, hey, I'm going to go back to my country, but I want to keep eating healthy. I want to eat some quality source meat. She gave me a list of American farmers. What a good resource. So yeah, you'll see me on LinkedIn. I'm one of the only attorneys that's kind of promoting the farmers too. Oh, and here's a very important point. I have some many ideas on how we can reduce the prices of meat for the American public. And it's at the same time, it's actually going to help out the farmers too. I'm going to get them more farmland.
Nice. I'll link to all your websites and socials in the show notes. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, and best of luck with the campaign.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.